If America abandons or continues to abandon religious sensibilities, it's lights out. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Michael Voris Show. I'm your host, Michael Voris. The show's named after me because I'm the host of the show. Right. That's how this kind of works. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about something that you can probably intuit, and if I say, you'll be like, oh, yeah, but it's just not something that's kind of top of mind. It's the interplay between culture, how we live and operate in relationship to each other, and all the institutions and media, sports, academics, educational, law, politics, medicine, all the institutions that we have, and how all of that is directly related to, drumroll please, religion. Yeah, very much closely. As a matter of fact, and then we go, oh God, here we go, religion. No. The word culture, the root word of it is cult. And not cult the way like, oh, it's the James Jones or John Jones, whatever, Jim Jones cult, where they all, drank the Kool-Aid in the jungles of Guyana way back in the 70s. And that's not what a cult is. That's a crazy cult. But cult, as we understand the term cult, it's a reference to religion. So when you look at the culture and how it overlaps, there's this big Venn diagram, you might think. And the overlap area is pretty significant. It's not just sort of barely touching each other. There's an enormous convergence between the culture and religion. It is the one of the measuring sticks by which you can tell the health of a culture. Is it thriving? Is it doing well? Is it advancing? Or is it diminishing? Is it beginning to collapse? Is it getting eaten away at the edges? Well, as we talk about world empires and world civilizations, they'll last about 250-ish years. We're coming up on that here in America. And one of the hallmarks, that's why I want to talk about this, because we're getting close to July 4th and, celebrating the nation and all that and everything, if that's actually still allowed without being either a racist or a bigot or a whatever. The idea that if a culture doesn't have religious principles that are lived out at its core, that culture begins to sort of fritter away. That's true, oddly enough, even among sort of paganish cultures. The Aztecs, the Mayans, the whole bit, their world, their cultural world still revolved around religious adherence or adherence to religious principles. And now, granted, it was pagan. These chop people's heads off and throw babies into the fire for sacrifice to the false gods. But nonetheless, the entire civilization revolved around those principles. The reason why religion is so critical to a culture's survival, is that it makes the members of the culture, the citizens, look outside themselves to something greater. It appeals to, even in a pagan type religion, it appeals to the sense that we are not the center of the universe. There is something else. And when you begin to lose religion, you've sort of got two things going on here at the same time. There's a reason cultures kind of burn themselves out, empires burn themselves out, and really the top line of that is that they get rid of religion, or they just start to ignore it. Some of them outlaw it. Once that's happened, it's pretty much lights out, because if you're not going to worship, a god, even a false god or gods, if you're not going to worship them or it, well, what are you going to worship? Well, you're going to worship yourself. Something in the human psychology, something or someone or some being has to be in charge. Absolutely has to be. And if it isn't going to be a god in an atheistic culture, then it's the state. In a capitalist gone wild culture, it's the individual. I want to get as much money as I possibly can. I want to dictate the terms of my own life. That's a joke, but That's how many people live their lives. Like money's the only thing that matters. And somehow, as long as they have money, they have control. They have control probably more so than other people who don't have, the material means to be able to control the same number of things, but nobody has control over his or her own life. No matter how wealthy you are, you can get cancer. No matter how wealthy you are, you can get in a car accident. No matter how wealthy you are, somebody can walk up and pop you. So you don't have control, you just have more control. Nonetheless, that's a psychology that human beings have. Somebody, something is the controlling agent of the civilization, of the empire. And if it isn't God, or the gods, or panoply of gods, then it's going to be somebody else. Even in a kind of a capitalist gone crazy world, it's still the idea that those very wealthy are the ones who control. They're kind of like the state. They're not the state per se, as in maybe elected officials, but they're the ones who dictate the way things work in the culture, because the politicians, as we discussed in an earlier episode of the Michael Voris Show, the politicians wind up being answerable to them. They do their bidding. They do their will. So you really do have, whether it's an official state organization or this kind of unofficial, murky, controlling agency, you're still worshiping either God or gods or the state as God. Something is there as God, period. And if the citizens of a culture don't recognize the need for religion, and that's why this is troublesome now, because every single poll that comes out and every survey that comes out says religion, at least in an organized fashion, continues to fall out of favor with most Americans. When I was, probably, I'd say in the early 80s, when I was a student at Notre Dame, huge majority of people across the country, of all sort of religious varieties and backgrounds, would attend the services. Obviously, Catholics go to Mass, but Protestants would go to whatever the congregational thing is that happens, depending on which denomination you're in. Jews would go to temple or synagogue. Everybody would go, not everybody, huge numbers of people, great big percentages. That has now dipped below 50%. And while it is true that on any given weekend there are more people at a religious service, more Americans at a religious service than at professional sporting events is really catching up pretty quickly. Not because more people are going to sporting events, although on some degree here or there that might be the case, but because fewer people are actually going to whatever the services are of their particular religion. As religion diminishes, something else, because that's sitting there in the top spot, as it begins to be abandoned, something else is going to move into that top spot. And if it isn't going to be the state, and Americans, remember, we kind of have a distaste, at least those of us that are probably more than 30 or 35, we have a distaste and a distrust for government. People who are young have sort of grown up with the imperial government and the imperial presidency, just continuing to expand and embrace every aspect of life. Telling businesses what they should do, when they should do it, and regulating this and that and everything else. So if you've grown up in that culture, and for the most part, people under mid-30s, late 30s have grown up in that culture, so to them it's just normal. But if you're beyond that age, and I'll be 62 soon, you kind of resent government getting involved in stuff like this, telling you how to do this and how to do that, and when you have to do this, and we're going to take more taxes from you for this, and all that sort of stuff. But in the absence of government, in the absence of religion, well, of course government's going to step in. People have there's going to always be some controlling agency. And the problem with young people today, problem for young people today, is the failure to recognize that. Thank you for watching The Michael Voris Show. If you'd like to watch the entire episode, please head over to churchmilitant.com and sign up as a premium member. If you need to sign up to become a premium member, go to churchmilitant.com/go premium.